Hello, dear listeners. Gather round, settle in, and get ready for a different kind of story tonight. Forget the shining legends of flawless heroes and valiant dragons. Tonight, we're delving into the cold, heavy, and often smelly truth beneath the armour. No glorifying here, just the raw, gritty reality of surviving in steel. Before we dive into the delightful world of medieval bruises and bad sleep, tell me, where are you all tuning in from? Are you cozing up in a modern apartment, maybe enduring a long commute, or perhaps like me, just enjoying a moment of peace hidden from the general chaos of life? Drop a comment below and let me know your location and the time. And if this kind of unvarnished storytelling brings you even a smidgen of peace, or at least keeps you from doom scrolling, then a quick like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. It's oddly comforting to know who else is drifting off to the same slow march through history. So, dim the lights, or, just turn your phone screen down. Let the imaginary fire in your imagination warm those stone walls, settle in, and let's begin with the rather undignified making of a knight. You are 7 years old when the path to knighthood begins, not with a gleaming sword, but with a rather unsentimental farewell. Your parents, undoubtedly proud and perhaps a touch relieved to offload a small, perpetually dirty human, send you off to serve in the household of a noble lord. There are no tearful goodbyes written in ink or preserved in keepsakes, just a brisk pat on the shoulder, a bundle of surprisingly scratchy clothing, and the entire weight of expectation settling on your small, still-growing frame. No one asks if you are ready. In truth, readiness is utterly irrelevant. You are a page now. The castle looms above you, stone towers stretching into a grey, perpetually judgmental sky. Its silhouette promises both greatness and hardship, but mostly it promises chores. The gate creaks open, groaning like an old knight after a particularly heavy feast. What lies beyond is not a world of honour and glory, but one of scrubbing, serving, and desperately trying to avoid getting trampled by a particularly ill-tempered stable boy. Chivalry, you quickly realise, will come much, much later, after years of fetching, carrying, and cleaning up after horses and noblemen with equally foul temperaments. Your duties are endless, stretching from sunrise to well after dark. You run errands, sweep halls, often for the third time that day because dust apparently multiplies. Deliver messages, usually to someone who then yells at you for the message, not the messenger, and assist with meals. On especially lucky days, you're permitted to polish armour, which sounds glamorous until you realise it means meticulously scraping dried mud and, shall we say, equine deposits from heavy iron boots. Your hands are perpetually blistered, your back aches in places you didn't even know existed, and the knights, they barely notice you. You are not yet one of them. You are the help. The invisible, perpetually grimy help. But even in these early, unglamorous days, training begins. Wooden swords are handed out like brooms, and bruises bloom across your arms and shins with alarming frequency as you spar with other boys who, like you, are eager to prove something, usually by whacking each other vigorously. You're taught how to fall from a horse without immediately breaking your neck. You fall often. Some days, it feels like falling is the main lesson, punctuated by surprised grunts and the smell of fresh earth. No one praises you for bruising well, but they do scold you for weakness, which mostly means showing pain, crying, or looking generally pathetic. You learn quickly. Pain is to be swallowed, not displayed. Discipline is everything. Speak only when spoken to, bow deeper to those of higher rank, even if they just spilled ale on your head, and never, ever question a command, no matter how trivial or humiliating. Your mistakes are corrected with the back of a hand, usually a large calloused one, or a weak scrubbing chamber pots, which makes you question the very concept of noble living. One boy forgets to remove his cap in the presence of the lady of the house. He spends 2 days on his knees in the chapel, praying for humility, probably wondering if God had a sense of humour about headwear. No one forgets again. If your family is wealthy, a tutor may be assigned to teach you reading, writing, and perhaps a bit of Latin. though the Latin mostly seems useful for understanding church services and the incredibly depressing inscriptions on tombs. If not, you learn by imitation. You listen, you memorize prayers, you copy letters with shaky hands when the steward is generous enough to share a scrap of parchment. Literacy is a luxury. Muscle and obedience matter more. Still, you learn. You learn which fork to use, though most prefer fingers, which is far more practical. You learn to stand perfectly still for hours during court feasts, balancing platters of steaming meat while nobles talk politics and loudly complain about the wine. You learn to become a ghost when tempers flare, and to disappear entirely when drunken knights start boasting about past battles, which inevitably leads to more yelling and possibly a thrown goblet. Every moment is an education in survival, like a very intense, very unscheduled, and very painful masterclass in avoiding trouble. Mornings begin with Mass. The castle chapel is cold year-round, and your breath fogs in the air as you kneel on unforgiving stone floors and try not to fall asleep during the incredibly long liturgy. Faith is not optional. It is as much a part of your training as swordplay. You are taught to fear hellfire, to respect the church and its very powerful landholdings, and to confess regularly, mostly so the priests know all your dirty little secrets. They speak of divine purpose, of holy duty. You nod along, trying to stay awake, mostly praying not to get sick, because there are few remedies and fewer recoveries. Meals are brief, usually consisting of bread, cheese, and meat if you're lucky. Vegetables are suspect. Many believe raw greens cause illness, which is probably true given the sanitation of the era, and so you develop a steady diet of salted meat and dry crusts. You eat quickly, knowing your next soul-crushing task waits. On rare feast days there may be roast pig or honeyed oat cakes. These days are remembered for years, like hazy, delicious dreams glimpsed through smoke. In the evenings, the great hall grows lively. Minstrels sing ballads recounting tales of Arthur and Roland and saints who slayed dragons, and presumably their own laundry. You sit on the edges near the fire trying to catch every word. The songs are meant to inspire, but you are often too tired to be moved. You think more of your sore feet than of chivalric deeds. Still, something stirs in you. A hope, perhaps, that someday someone will sing of you, even if it's just about your remarkable ability to clean a latrine with dignity. You sleep where you can, often in the servants' quarters, shoulder to shoulder with other boys on straw pallets that smell vaguely of sweat, mildew, and existential dread. Some nights, you are pulled from sleep to help with late arrivals or unexpected guests. You learn to rise without complaint, to work through exhaustion, to never let your eyes betray fatigue. A knight, you're told, must be ready at any hour. The training starts here with the grim reality of forced midnight errands. You're not alone. Other pages suffer with you. You form silent friendships, built on shared glances, knowing nods, and muttered complaints that would get you a week in the stocks if anyone overheard. Together, you learn the rhythms of castle life. You learn which knights are cruel, and which will look the other way when you steal a second helping of stew. You learn who to trust, who to fear, and which hidden corners of the castle offer a fleeting moment's peace from the endless demands. There are moments of levity, a jest from the cook, who surprisingly has a dark sense of humour, a clumsy knight tripping over a sleepy hound, a stolen apple that tastes like pure freedom. You cling to these moments. They remind you that life exists beyond duty, that laughter still has a place, even here, amidst the stone and grit. Occasionally, you catch a glimpse of the world beyond the walls, merchants arriving with silks and exotic spices, a troupe of travelling performers who smell suspiciously like unwashed animals, or a noble woman riding past with her ridiculously large retinue. These sights feel foreign, like stories glimpsed through a thick fog. You're not part of that world yet, but maybe one day. Maybe. At times, doubt creeps in. The stories of glory feel impossibly distant. The reality is far more grinding. You wonder if all of this, the aching limbs, the scoldings, the constant low-level hunger, is truly the path to honour. But every so often you see a knight ride out in gleaming armour, pennant flying, and your chest tightens with the thought, someday that could be me, if I don't die from an infected blister first. Your lessons in humility do not stop with bruises and hunger. There are also ceremonies to attend, even though you're barely more than background noise in them. You observe as nobles gather, dressed in fine fabrics you're not allowed to touch, much less wear. You're reminded by their casual glances and sometimes their cutting words that your position is somewhere between useful and entirely invisible. When dignitaries visit, the castle becomes a bustling, anxiety-ridden theatre. You help prepare guest rooms, polish silver until your arms ache, and sweep the same corridors 3 times over. If anything is out of place, the pages are blamed, and if something goes wrong, say, a particularly ill-tempered dog bites a visiting bishop's leg, well, let's just say it helps to know how to look busy while being nowhere near the problem. You quickly master the art of looking furiously industrious while being completely unhelpful. On festival days, there is music, dancing, and entirely too much wine, at least for the adults. You're allowed to watch from the corners, soaking in the sounds and sights while pretending not to be watching too intently, because that would be creepy. Occasionally, someone slips you a sweetmeat or a bit of cake, and for a moment, the burdens of your position feel lighter, almost fluffy. But these small kindnesses do not erase the reality. Your place is to serve, observe, and remember, because remembering who's important is key to not getting yelled at. Some pages find escape in books if they can read. The old steward's chamber holds a handful of illuminated manuscripts, heavy, bound in leather, and guarded as fiercely as the Lord's own armoury. On lucky evenings, you're allowed to sit beside a flickering fire and listen as an older scribe reads aloud tales of Roman generals, who also seem to have a lot of problems, or saints who endured unspeakable trials, which sounds remarkably similar to your daily life. These stories feed the mind while your body slowly, achingly heals from the day's chores. There are warnings too, spoken in hushed tones or muttered by older, more cynical servants. They tell you of pages who failed to advance, boys who cracked under the pressure, or were sent home in disgrace. Sometimes they vanish without explanation, probably sent to a monastery or forced to become a very polite sheep herder. Sometimes you overhear things you were never meant to hear, whispers of plots, scandals, or unusually bad harvests. You quickly learn when to speak, when to nod, and when to keep your head down and look utterly oblivious. The castle is your crucible, and every hour spent within its walls forges you into something harder, leaner, more capable. Not a knight, not yet, but no longer a child. You are a creature in transition, battered, disciplined, and quietly, stubbornly determined. So when you lie awake at night staring at the wooden beams above your straw-filled mattress, which probably has bedbugs, let's be honest, you think not just of what you've endured, but of what lies ahead, the next phase, the next challenge, the next painful step on the path that will one day, if the gods, your lord, and your very tired body all permit, make you a knight. But for now, you are a page, and that, you decide, is enough. For now. At the age of 14, the apron strings of pagehood are ceremoniously snipped, though not with any kindness or softness. You are no longer a page. You are now a squire. And while this new title may sound like a promotion, it comes with considerably fewer sweetmeats, and far, far more bruises. You have graduated from polishing floors to polishing armour, from fetching goblets to fetching the man who might be dying in one. Your new role is personal, intimate even. You are assigned to a knight, and you're expected to serve him as faithfully as a shadow. Where he goes, you go. If he rides into battle, you follow, probably praying a lot. If he falls, you run into the carnage to help him up, risking your own life in the process. You're no longer just a general castle grunt. You are the squire of a warrior, and your days are shaped by his demands, his moods, and his alarming tendency to get into fights. The physical training increases tenfold. Riding a warhorse, for instance, is not the elegant glide you once imagined from the ballads. These beasts are enormous, bred for power and war, and often more temperamental than most noblemen, after a particularly bad hangover. Mounting them is a small battle in itself. Controlling them, a constant sweaty negotiation. Your thighs ache, your spine jars with every thunderous step, and your backside hasn't felt normal since Michaelmas. Sword training intensifies. You now wield live blades, not to kill, usually, but sharp enough to cause serious concern if your opponent happens to be better rested or less distracted than you. You spar daily, your body covered in bruises that never quite fade before new ones bloom. Every session is an exercise in humility. For every swing you land, you take 3 in return. The knight you serve doesn't expect grace. He expects grit and a surprising tolerance for pain. But perhaps the most tiresome, soul-crushing part of your duties is equipment care. Armour, you quickly learn, is not just metal. It is an ecosystem. Sweat, grime, and the occasional lost slug somehow make their way into the joints of plate mail. You clean it, polish it, inspect every hinge and strap with the meticulousness of a nervous surgeon. If the greaves pinch or the helmet visor sticks mid-battle, that's your fault. If your knight dies because you missed a cracked buckle, you'll likely wish you'd died first, just to avoid the angry ghost of your former master. Weapons need sharpening daily. Lances must be tested for structural integrity, usually by whacking them against a tree. Shields examined for cracks. Your knight's life and your rapidly developing reputation depends on the absolute precision of your work. No one thanks you when everything goes right, but everyone notices when it doesn't. And then there are tournaments. They were romanticised when you were a page, colourful affairs of trumpets and cheering maidens. Now, you see the blunted swords break bones. You are the one saddling the horse, carrying the ridiculously long lances, wiping the blood from your knight's cheek so he can smile for the crowd, and hopefully not pass out. If he wins, you collect the prize money, which he mostly keeps. If he loses, you collect his broken ribs and what remains of his dignity. It's like being a medieval sports therapist, but with more impalement risk. When real war comes, and it always does because medieval lords really loved a good skirmish, you march beside your knight into mud, rain, and uncertainty. Campaigns are long, uncomfortable affairs. Food is scarce. Sleep is scarcer. Your armour, if you have any, chafes in places you didn't know existed. You begin to understand the real meaning of exhaustion when your limbs move, only because you know you must, not because they want to. Battle is not glorious. It is a cacophony of screams, the clang of metal, and orders lost in the wind, the sickening clash of bodies, the stench of blood and sweat, the sudden, terrible silence of a dying man. These become your grim education. You learn to distinguish between fear that sharpens you and fear that paralyzes you. You pray the former shows up more often. You're not there to fight, not yet. But that does not mean you are safe. When your knight is unhorsed, it is your job to reach him, lift him, pull him out of danger. Imagine dragging a man in full armour, each piece weighing more than a holiday roast, across a muddy field while arrows fall like very sharp rain. It is not heroic, it is back-breaking, and the reward is usually just the chance to do it again tomorrow. When your knight is injured, you tend to his wounds, often with surprisingly little medical knowledge. If he is captured, you're expected to negotiate or deliver messages to secure his release. Sometimes this means dealing with men who would rather see him rot in a dungeon, or worse, make him pay an exorbitant ransom. You learn diplomacy not from tutors but from sheer necessity. Your words must be careful, your posture humble, your tone respectful. Even your silence becomes a powerful tool. There are moments, rare but real, when you feel a flicker of pride, when you lead your knight's horse into a camp and heads turn to look, when he nods at you after a battle, bloodied but alive, a silent acknowledgement of your indispensable role. These moments are fleeting, like sunlight through arrow slits, but they matter. They keep you going. Back at the castle, your duties continue. You train younger pages, passing on the same hard lessons you once learned, perhaps with a touch more or less sympathy than you received. You serve at banquets, help organise hunts, and remain at your knight's side whenever guests of importance arrive. Your sword is worn, your boots are cracked, and you move like a man twice your age, but you are no longer merely a servant. You are being watched, evaluated, measured. The priests still expect your prayers, your lord still expects your loyalty, and your body expects rest, which it rarely receives, but there is no turning back. The only way forward is through. You begin to think about your own coat of arms. What colours? What symbols? You dream about the moment of dubbing, the sword tapping your shoulders, the moment you rise, not as a squire, but as a knight. It feels impossibly far, it feels inevitable, it feels both. Then there are the hard days. The days when you bury a fellow squire trampled beneath a warhorse, or run through by a lance that didn't look blunted enough. No one sings songs for squires. No one writes poems for the boys who almost made it. You learn to carry grief without showing it. You learn to keep working even as the ground shifts beneath you, because the world doesn't stop for tears. If you are lucky, your knight teaches you more than just battle. He teaches you how to think, how to judge a man's character, how to read a battlefield, how to lead. If he is truly wise, he teaches you when to speak and when to hold your tongue, how to pick your battles, and how to lose with a shred of grace. These are not things armour can protect you from, but they are just as vital. Winter brings new challenges. You now understand that a sword is only as effective as the hand that can still feel its hilt. Your fingers crack from cold, and the metal of your knight's armour feels like ice as you buckle it on each morning. Snow turns the training yard into a mire of frozen mud. Horses slip. So do you. You do not complain. The weather, like war, does not care how you feel. There is talk among the older squires, talk of glory, of rebellion in the east, of a king's summons. You listen, absorb, calculate. You've seen enough to know that glory often looks suspiciously like a fresh grave. Still, you would ride out tomorrow if called. The waiting is often worse than the war. You write your first letter. It is stiff, clumsy, and formal, addressed to your parents if they are still alive and telling them little. You're not even sure where to send it, but writing it feels important, like anchoring yourself, like proving you're still someone beneath the bruises, sweat, and steel. One night after a feast, your knight, drunk on mead and nostalgia, tells you of his first campaign. He describes the rain, the hunger, the inexplicable thrill of surviving a desperate charge. Then he grows quiet. He stares into the fire and names 3 men who did not return. You do not speak. You are meant to listen and remember. You practice daily, sometimes in secret. You mimic your knight's stance, his footwork, the way he holds his blade just before a strike. You copy everything, hoping that imitation will one day become instinct. You bleed, you limp, you learn. Then one morning, without fanfare, your name is called. You are to ride with your knight, not as an observer, but as his second. There is no sleep the night before, no sleep is needed. When you mount your horse, you are ready. Not perfect, not fearless, but ready. Your story is still being written, but already it is etched into the cold iron of swords, the dust of roads, the calluses on your hands. You are no longer a boy, not quite a man, but closer now. You are a squire, and you are becoming. You're 21 years old, or near enough. Some squires are knighted younger, some older, but the number doesn't matter half so much as the fact that someone in authority has finally decided you're ready. Ready to kneel, ready to swear. Ready, in theory, to kill and die with a little more official ceremony attached. There's no sudden transformation. You don't wake up with a deeper voice or a miraculously firmer jawline. You're still sore from yesterday's training, still have mud on your boots and a scar across your shoulder that won't quite heal. But this is the moment your entire youth has crawled toward. Your body bruised, your pride battered, your hands hardened by years of polishing, sharpening, carrying, and serving. It has all led here, to the day of your knighthood. It begins with solitude. You're given a chamber, small and cold, in which to pray, reflect, and fast through the night. There's nothing glamorous about it, just stone walls, a single sputtering candle, and a chapel-supplied blanket that somehow manages to be both thin and incredibly scratchy. You kneel on the floor, bones aching, stomach grumbling, and try not to think about the warmth of the kitchens or the tantalizing scent of roasting pork wafting from below. This vigil is meant to purify the soul, to prepare you to accept the sacred duties of a knight. You're expected to meditate on the responsibilities ahead, defending the weak. Good luck with that. Serving your lord, most of whom are quite demanding, upholding the church, which has many rules, and fighting with honour, which sounds very noble but often involves a lot of mud. In practice, you spend as much time wondering whether anyone would notice if you had a tiny sip of water or sat down for 5 blessed minutes. You're not alone in your discomfort. Dozens of squires have kept this vigil before you, some trembling with anticipation, others feigning serenity. You wonder which you are. You try to remember all the prayers, the creeds, the proper posture. You try not to think about the rumours of squires vomiting from nerves during the ceremony, or passing out mid-kneel. That would be unfortunate. Memorable, but unfortunate. Come dawn, you are escorted to the main hall. It is transformed for the occasion. Banners hang, candles flicker, and nobles, knights, and priests gather in ceremonial dress, whispering politely behind gloved hands. A hush falls as you enter. Your name is announced. You kneel. Your lord, or perhaps the king, depending on your station and how important you are, approaches. He carries a sword, a symbol of service and power. It may not be his own blade. Some lords keep a ceremonial sword just for this purpose, polished to a mirror shine and never actually used in battle. You try not to look too closely. You try not to shake. The sword taps your shoulders, left, then right. The dubbing. In some traditions, you're also given a symbolic slap, a reminder of the physical and moral pain you must now endure without complaint. It's less of a blow and more of a firm pat, but the message is clear. A knight's duty is not to comfort, but to sacrifice, and occasionally get slapped. Then comes the oath. You speak solemnly, pledging loyalty to your liege, to God, and to the increasingly aspirational ideals of chivalry. You promise to defend the weak, to protect women, to speak truth, and to fight with honour. You repeat the words with as much gravity as you can muster, though you silently wonder how many knights still actually live by them, especially the truth part. With the oath complete, you rise. Not as a boy, not as a servant, but as a knight. The change is subtle, internal, and yet profound. People who barely glanced at you yesterday now nod in solemn approval. Your peers clap your shoulder, their expressions a mixture of respect and mild envy. Your lord offers a tight-lipped smile, which by noble standards might as well be a standing ovation and a confetti cannon. There may be a feast afterward, depending on the wealth of your lord or the mood of the court. If so, you sit a little higher at the table, drink from a finer cup, and receive congratulations from nobles you once served wine to. It's quite the upgrade from the straw pallet. Some squires are knighted on battlefields, their ceremony improvised amidst carnage, which is much more dramatic, but less comfortable. Others receive the full pageantry. Either way, the weight of the title settles on your shoulders, heavy as chainmail. Knighthood, as it turns out, is not a destination, but a doorway, a very heavy, creaky doorway that leads to more responsibility. The world does not slow down for you to enjoy your new status. Your duties expand immediately. You're now expected to lead men, not just follow them, to make decisions, not simply obey, to ride at the front, not the rear. The same sword that dubbed you a knight is now yours to wield, and no one will double-check your choices anymore. If you err, it will be public, and it will be costly. You're also now accountable in new ways. A knight's word is binding. Your signature carries weight. Your absence at court is noted, and your presence in church is assumed. So no skipping mass, even if your foot hurts. If you drink too deeply or speak too freely, it reflects not only on you but on your household, your banner, and your liege. A slip of the tongue can sour alliances. A drunken scuffle can undo months of delicate diplomacy. In short, your margin for error shrinks dramatically the moment your shoulder is tapped with a sword. Suddenly, everyone expects you to be a grown-up. Your responsibilities extend beyond battle. If your lord grants you land, and hopefully he does because knights need to eat, you are expected to manage it wisely. That means collecting taxes from those perpetually hungry peasants, settling disputes among peasants, usually about a cow or a chicken, maintaining roads, which are always muddy, and ensuring the harvest is strong. Knights are often imagined as warriors alone, but in truth they are administrators, enforcers, and landlords. Your sword may rest in its scabbard for months at a time, but your seal is pressed into wax almost daily. It's like being a medieval CEO, but with more potential for disembowelment. You also now have your own squire. The irony is not lost on you. He is young, uncertain, and probably as eager to please and terrified as you once were. You teach him to polish your armour just so, to saddle your horse without bruising its haunches, to pour wine without spilling. You correct him gently at first, then more firmly, because you're a knight now, damn it. He reminds you of yourself. It is humbling, and slightly amusing, to see how far you've come and how far you still have to go. There is also the matter of your coat of arms. If you haven't had one before, it must now be chosen. Colours, symbols, family mottos, they all matter. They identify you on the field of battle and in court. They speak before you do. A red lion rampant on a field of gold says something very different than a black cross on a white bend. Choose wisely, or pay a herald to help, because you don't want to accidentally declare yourself the knight of the fluffy bunnies. Your new armour is fitted to your frame, assuming your lord is generous or your family still has coin to spare. Full plate is expensive, and every piece must be custom made. Greaves for your legs, gauntlets for your hands, a cuirass for your chest. You stand still as the blacksmiths measure and clink their fingers, leaving soot on your skin. The weight is impressive. Walking in it feels like learning to move all over again, like being a particularly clumsy robot. But you feel safe inside it too, as if metal might guard not only your body but your newly elevated name. You take your first formal ride through the village, not as a servant trailing behind a retinue, but at its head. Children run to the roadside, their mouths agape. Old men bow stiffly. A woman tosses you a flower, hopefully not a rotten one. You try not to look too pleased, maintaining a stoic, knightly expression. The peasants don't cheer exactly, but they do stare, and in the medieval world, attention is a kind of applause. That night, in the solitude of your chamber, you remove each piece of armour slowly, methodically. You place your sword with care. You stare at your reflection in the polished plate and try to see what others saw today. A knight, a protector, a leader. You do not quite believe it yet, but you will. Not everything changes overnight. You still train each day. You still wake early and pray, mostly for the pain in your knee to go away. You still limp after a long ride and wince when a blade catches your elbow during training. But your name is called with more weight now. You are consulted, not commanded. The youngest squires eye you with something like awe or fear, or possibly both. War will come again. You know this. And when it does, your position in the vanguard will be expected. No more standing behind a shield wall. No more waiting for orders. You will lead the charge, raise your voice above the din, and be the first to cross the field. If fortune favours you, you may return with honour. If not, your coat of arms will be carried home without you, probably quite muddy. This is the cost of the accolade. This is the burden of the oath. But still, you are proud, not of your status but of your survival. You endured the long years, the cold vigils, the humiliation, the relentless training, the fear. And now, you wear the title as a second skin. You are a knight, and your real service has only just begun. You do not become a knight and immediately feel powerful. You become a knight, and then you are handed 60 pounds of steel and told to get on a horse. The first real lesson of knighthood is not how to fight, but how to walk, breathe, and not fall over in your own armour. At first, it's chainmail, a horrifyingly heavy shirt of interlocking rings that drapes over your shoulders like an iron tunic. It's not as heavy as it looks, but it clings to you, drags at your limbs, and catches every single drop of sweat your body produces. Beneath it, you wear a padded gambeson, quilted linen stuffed with wool or rags, which smells absolutely awful after a single skirmish, and even worse after a week. But it keeps the mail from grinding against your skin like a particularly aggressive cheese grater, so you tolerate the stench. As warfare evolves, so does your kit. Plate armour begins to replace mail, at first just a breastplate and greaves, Then pauldrons for your shoulders, vambraces for your forearms, sabatons to encase your feet, articulated joints, riveted segments, each edition designed to protect without pinching, though they almost always manage to do both. Eventually, you are sheathed in metal from crown to toe, and it's less like wearing clothes and more like being folded into a walking bell. The helmet is the absolute worst. It muffles your hearing, narrows your vision to an alarming degree, and steams up with your own breath in battle, making you feel like a heavily armoured, very confused tea kettle. In battle, it protects your skull, mostly. Outside of battle, it functions primarily to give you a throbbing headache and make you look vaguely ridiculous. Some helms have visors you can lift, which helps with breathing, spitting, and occasionally seeing where you're going, though it also makes your face an easier target. Trade-offs are everywhere in armour. Mobility, surprisingly, is not impossible. You can run, squat, mount a horse, even roll if trained well. But everything takes effort. You are not agile, you are deliberate, and you quickly learn to conserve movement like a man counting his last coins. After all, if your opponent wears nothing heavier than boiled leather, he'll be darting around while you resemble a mobile sculpture of St. George, probably covered in bird droppings. Then there's the maintenance. Every single piece must be cleaned, oiled, inspected. A single rusted rivet can jam a joint. A dented chest plate can buckle under a second blow. Your squire essentially becomes a blacksmith's apprentice overnight, scrubbing and hammering late into the evening. If he forgets a strap or fails to fasten your cuisses, thigh armour, correctly, you notice it painfully and immediately. And let's not forget the weapons. Your sword is your constant companion, but not your only one. It is not the slim rapier of modern imagination, but a broad, weighty blade meant for hacking, not fencing. Its edge is kept sharp, but not razor thin, better to survive impact. You carry it at your side, but draw it only when necessary. The sword is both symbol and tool, and in your hand, it becomes an extension of your very tired will. Then there's the lance. A knight without a lance is like a fish without gills, utterly useless in open battle. The lance is not delicate. It is a sharpened pole, roughly 10 feet long, meant to be couched under your arm and driven like a battering ram into whoever's unlucky enough to be across the field on horseback. It turns your momentum into deadly force, but it is also unwieldy, easy to miss with, and once broken, mostly good for poking campfires. The mace is a brutal companion, short, stubby and blunt. No finesse, no elegance, just a lump of iron on a stick designed to cave in helmets and crack ribs. Useful when your enemy's armour laughs off blades. When subtlety fails, the mace makes its point with savage clarity. Axes are similar, less common among knights, more typical of mercenaries or those from northern stock, but in close quarters, an axe can hook a shield, split a helm, or drag a man off a horse. It's not considered gentlemanly, but neither, to be fair, is medieval warfare. Shields serve both offensive and defensive roles. You carry one, usually kite-shaped or heater style, slung across your back or strapped to your forearm. It bears your coat of arms, a bright splash of symbolism amidst the mud and smoke. You learn to punch with it, to deflect, to absorb force. A good shield might save your life. A bad one might become your coffin lid. Siege weapons are a different beast altogether. Catapults, trebuchets, and battering rams, handled by engineers and lower soldiers. You observe them more than operate them, unless you're particularly unlucky. But you'll definitely learn to fear them. No armour can save you from a boulder. When battle comes, your kit is both saviour and prison. On the charge, you ride with couched lance, shield raised, visor down. Your world becomes a tunnel of noise and blur. Impact is sudden and absolute. You hit or are hit. You fall or you do not. And if you do fall, it is up to someone else, perhaps your very anxious squire, to drag you clear before the trampling begins. After the charge, if you are still upright, comes the melee. Sword drawn, you engage man to man. It is not graceful. It is a messy, grunting symphony of blood and clanging steel. You swing, you block, you pray. You aim not for heroics, but for joints, armpits, behind the knees, visor slits, the weak points. Every knight has them, and if you don't find theirs, they'll certainly find yours. In the aftermath, assuming you survive, you learn the lesser-known role of a knight, repairman. You remove your armour piece by piece, every dent and scratch telling its own small, painful story. If a rivet snapped or a strap tore, it's noted, recorded, and mended. Your sword is cleaned, inspected, re-oiled. Every weapon dulled must be sharpened. You don't sleep until your gear is ready again, because next time, it could mean your life. You begin to appreciate the subtle differences between good steel and bad. You learn the smiths by name, the balance of a sword, the precise weight of a shield, the exact line where a helmet should rest against your brow. All become second nature. You grow fussy about details that once seemed trivial, the type of leather used in your gauntlets, the weight distribution of a new axe, the way a visor latches shut. Some knights personalise their equipment with flair, engraved pommels, crests etched into breastplates, gilt inlays. You may do the same if coin and vanity permit. But beneath the ornament lies the same brutal reality. Armour is not costume. It is coffin prevention. There are downsides, of course. Armour is expensive. Your share of spoils from war or tournaments often vanishes into repairs and replacements. And then there's the matter of heat. Summer in a full suit of plate is like walking inside a forge, especially in the midday sun. You sweat buckets, faint if you're not careful, and attract flies with all the grace of a walking roast. Despite it all, you come to trust your gear like a second skin. You've tested it under arrow fire. You've felt the jolt of a mace strike echo through your ribs and known the armour did its job. It protects, yes, but it also transforms you. You walk taller in it. People part when they see you coming. Children point, commoners bow. And yet, you know this. The steel does not make you invincible. It merely postpones the inevitable. You can fight well, prepare thoroughly, and equip yourself with the finest gear. But in the end, it's still just you, a very expensive tin can, hoping for a bit of luck.